Klipp, please tell us a little bit about your background and then what happened to you, and you follow your own sequence.
My name is David Klipp. I was born July 9, 1905 in Skudi, Lithuania, where I lived until I was about 8 years old. My father was a rabbinically educated man, and in 1907 he went to the United States to try to get himself busy in business or whatever it is, establish himself, and I left in Europe my mother, my older sister, and myself. Now, father established himself in New York, established a sweater factory, and came back in 1910 to take the family over. My mother refused to go. She didn't want to leave her parents there. They were old people, naturally. And then my father liquidated his part in New York and moved over to Łódź, Poland. Established a factory in Poland about the same nature what he had in New York. And in 1913, the family came over there. This time again, my mother, my older sister, and I. I had another sister born in Łódź in 1911, and I had another brother born in Łódź in 1916. No, my father was busy in the business, doing it, make a normal living there and so on. And then in 1914, the breakout was the First World War broke out 1914, and after a short while, Germany occupied Łódź. Germany confiscated the factory, the machinery, and the goods produced, and issued a certificate to be paid after the war. No, we know all what happened to it. Nothing came out of it. But this forced my father to start to work as a salesman for somebody else. And he continued this working so, and we went to school, children went to school and so on. My mother, after a long illness, died in 1920 at the age of 39. We still continued to work. Father was trying to take care as father and mother and so on. And the children grew up meanwhile. I was 15 years old at this time. After school, I helped out at home and so on. And I saw after the intention of my father was he tried to get my sister and myself to immigrate to the United States. Now, my sister agreed to it, and papers were initiated and were made, and she left in 1923 for New York. I refused to go. I didn't want to leave my father with the children, with the smaller children by himself. Circumstances and the life made it that we became, except father and son relationship, we became very close friends. And we were a tight family. And I saw that my father is just killing himself trying to do both jobs and working and so on. So I tried to convince my father he should remarry. Took me a long time. I finally convinced him, and in the end of 1922 he remarried. We were very lucky. He married a very nice lady with a nice background and so on. She was one of 5 sisters. Her younger sister became 11 years later my wife. In 1926, I was drafted to the Polish army, where I was until March of 1928. After release from the army, I start to work again. Yeah, before the army I worked already. After school I worked and so on. And at the same time I attended classes learning accounting. When I came out of the army, I took up a job with a place where I was the assistant manager in a factory who was producing ladies' soldiers and socks and so on. I worked for 4 years, taking care of the factory and partially in the office also. In 1928, Mr. Anatol Frumkin, who knew my father and knew about me, what I am doing and so on, wanted to meet me. Mr. Funkin was one of the personalities who was offered. He didn't look for anything, but offered him a representation of a large silk factory, artificial silk, which some people gave big money and big guarantees to have the representation. He needed only to say his word. He wants to take it, and then took it. I had a conversation with Mr. Funkin, and he hired me. I accepted the job. After a time I will be able to relinquish my old duties in the old place. I couldn't live like out of this. And he gave me the time what I needed. I needed about 2 months, and then I went to work for Mr. Funkin in April. Now, Mr. Funkin was socially very active in social life, and he was a very well-known personality. At the same time, when he hired me, and he also had a representation of very fine mako, this is cotton, special cotton, what was made in the largest place in Europe, Canon, Estonia, Estland. Now, this department was headed by an elderly man, Mr. Weinreich. It's only based on conversations and writing letters and so on. The dealing were also by correspondence. Now, Mr. Funkin hired me, and when I came to work, he wasn't there. He was out of town. And I'm coming in, say good morning, and I say, Mr. Weinreich, Mr. Funkin hired me. I should take over this artificial silk. If he hired you, do whatever you want. He didn't even know, but Mr. Funkin forgot to mention to him. So I organized the whole deal, and I worked aboard until the war broke out, until 1939. I was heading the department selling silk, artificial silk for factories who made material out of it and so on. It was very successful, and Mr. Funkin still was most of the time out of the country. He was a very wealthy man, as I said, and he had suites in every major hotel in major cities and so on. In Germany also, before the war, before Hitler came, he was having his suite in Berlin also. Now, and I worked there until the war broke out. When the war broke out in September the 1st, 1939, the Germans overrun Poland overnight. We expected this. We knew already a month before that something might happen. And we were, I wouldn't say prepared, but we were expecting the worst of it. But the idea was, everybody thought, how long can it last? Last 3 months, 4 months, the war will be over, and so on. And then even if Germany is successful in overrunning the first part, they will come to Warsaw, they will be stopped. Well, there was a belief that the Polish army was able to do it. They did not. 6 days afterward, there was a panic. German army came closer to Lodz always, and there was a rumor around that they are arresting men in order to prevent them from joining the Polish army. The Polish army issued orders that every man who is reserve or so on should join a unit. When they walked and joined the unit. No, and so the rumors were that they don't do to women anything, but men, they intern in camps and so on and so on. Then it was a big pressure of everyone to leave. And I was pressured by my family too, and a few days later, my brother and I, with some other people, left on foot toward Warsaw, not knowing where we go. The whole way where we come, there was no one city what was intact. Everything was burning. It was a result of bombardments and so on, and there were no people anywhere. All we encountered is the bridges and doors full with bodies and moving people, farmers with their goods and families, everybody trying to go. At the same time, the Polish military was on the retreat. Always the Germans were always one day behind. And the military, soldiers threw away everything, just walked away from this. No, we thought in Warsaw there will be some kind of a stopping to it. It took us a week to come to Warsaw. No, and then we stayed in Warsaw, my brother and I, a lot of people. No, Warsaw was under constant fire, bombarded by air, by day and night, air and artillery. And the worst came on the 25th of September. This was, I happened to be in the same building. I stood in a building on Obojna 6. It was a big building, 6-story. Across the street was the Polish theater. When in the Polish theater was the police from my town, from Bydgoszcz. Now, the Germans probably knew that the military people are there. On the 25th, when they started to the bombardment, in the morning artillery, precise 8 o'clock, I remember, sitting at the barber shop, 8 o'clock, started first. And then during the whole night, artillery. The city was set on fire, and they tried probably to get a bomb in the Polish theater, so they hit our building. And we started to run away. The whole city was burning. There was no street where there was no fire in houses, so on. Naturally, we run away like everyone and try to find shelter somewhere. There was no way to hide, so we hide here and there a little bit. And Warsaw capitulated 2 days later. The bombing went a little bit lesser because there were dealings going on, give in or not to give in and so on. But the official capitulation of Warsaw was 2 days later. No, we were in Lodz, my family, I was in Warsaw, the family was in Lodz. So we tried to get back to the family. When I saw the first German column marching into Warsaw, I approached the column where on the head was a young German officer. I speak German, so I approached him and I asked him if the way to Lodz is possible so I can start to go. He looks at me for a while and then says in German, if I were you, I would go to Palestine. No, we knew already this is not too good of a sign, and all these rumors what Germans are doing is probably right. But he was quite a young man, and the answer he gave me. Naturally, we started to go home wherever possible. It took us 4 days, but we finally reached home. Reached home, I remember we had hijacked, so we were hiring some farmer to give us the hide for a few kilometers from one to another and so on. But in 4 days we made it back home. We walked in at early morning to Jewish cemetery from the other end of town, and we're waiting there until evening so we can go on the street, nobody could recognize that we are Jewish and so on, and also made it home. Now the family was united. My brother, the German, came up with certain restrictions. Jews shouldn't do this and shouldn't do that. And on top of this, they start, every Jew was every Polish kid, 5 or 6 years old, couldn't catch a Jew and tell him, come, clean my floor, clean this or do this. So Jews simply didn't go out on the street. They were hurt, because if they want to go out, they were caught to some kind of work. By the Poles and by the Germans too. Now, doctors couldn't attend any Jews at all. Doctor couldn't practice at all, and orders came out, Jews shouldn't use the sidewalk. Should go only on the street. Now, my brother, a young man born 1916, he was 23 years old. He decided he will not take it. And he with a friend of his decided they go away to see what will happen. Listen, there is not to sit and wait, didn't make sense. He didn't have a family, he could do it. So he went, his idea was to come to the United States, to my sister here. He spoke a very good English. He was good educated, and he belonged to an English-speaking club in Lodz. And he made a friendship developed with the British consul in Lodz. He was a guest in his home always. Wherever visitors came, they invited him and so on. Well, he tried to get over here. No, I didn't know for a long time what happened to him, but then my father became ill and died in January of 1940. And I wrote a letter to my brother that I knew at this time he is in Kovno. I wrote a letter somewhere to notify him of my father's death. The answer came in while I was in ghetto already, so I knew he's still in Kovno there. A day after my father's death, they came and took me out of the apartment. We were living in the same building, what belonged to my boss, Anatol Frumkin. My father lived one side of the hall and I the other side of the hall. And so my father died on January the 16th. The funeral wasn't a very easy job also, because only my sister and I attended, because they could only go without being caught. They didn't, even a Pole could catch him if somebody went with the funeral, he could catch him to walk too. They were not very friendly. Anyway, a day after, Germans came in, somebody probably showed them that there was an apartment, a house, and they threw me out of my apartment and my father's apartment. We received only 5 minutes to leave the house with only thing what I can wear on it, to everybody, nothing else. It was the afternoon, and it was dinner time always. My made us dinner ready and want to serve dinner. So when she heard this, she started to take a basket and pack in everything to take with us. She said, "Oh, no, you will serve dinner for us." So we went with this what we could have on us and nothing else. Now, where did we go? We knew the ghetto is being formed. So we went toward the ghetto. Came into the ghetto, certain houses were left alone, there were nobody there, because there other people left. And then in places where Poles used to live, they left too, because this had to be the part for the ghetto. I went in house, somebody told me on this house, Zgierska 36, there is an apartment. So I went in and there we are. Now, Zgierska the street was divided, the ghetto, because this was the main road from out of town and so on. So this is where they built later on the fences and bridge. In order to cross from one to the other, you have to come over a big bridge. So I lived there for quite a while, and then I had to go, then Rumkowski, the Judenälteste. I think I have to back up a little bit. I mentioned the Judenälteste before. When the Germans came into Lodz, not what they organized, they called in the senior people from the Jewish community. There was a group of leading part of the Jewish community. Among them was Mr. Rumkowski. Mr. Rumkowski was a very well-looking man with a big head of gray hair, white hair, silver, and he impressed everybody as an elderly man. So they simply appointed him. He would be what they call the Judenälteste, because they assumed he is the oldest one, and he used to be a merchant before the war. He was also active in community deals. Let's say he was one orphanage what he was very much occupied with and so on, and I know him because I placed people in his orphanage before the war. So he came up after a few days, I understand, with an idea to the German that he has a very valuable thing what you could give it to them. And what was it? They have people in every way of life, in every walk of life, what can do any kind of job you need, and we can be very helpful for the German economy. So if you can let us work, we can produce something which you can use. No, the German needed this type of work, and that's why I think the Lodz ghetto was one of the oldest, the longest ghetto sustained. We established factories in every field, in every nature. We were building portable homes to be used in Germany after people were bombed out. So, and this is the way we sustain. No, we get paid for our work with food. How much food? It was only decided by the Germans, someone they want to give him. Our problem was to divide the food among all the people. No, the accounting, the food came into a department, what they call the food department. German called it Verpflegungsabteilung. And I was assigned by Rumkowski to be the office manager of this Verpflegungsabteilung. I worked there, organized. Then the German called back all the Polish money, and we had to issue ghetto money. So this was again done to the department where I was the head office, and I had to deal with Mr. Schwind, who happened to be on the German department. I don't know what kind of capacity, but he was the one who dealt with the economical things. And he came to me every day, and I collected every day Polish money, and he came and picked it up and so on. To get away a little bit from it, this Mr. Schwind, a few weeks ago, I was called as a witness here in Los Angeles, but I didn't want to go to Germany, and they had somebody from the ghetto whom they thought I can identify. I couldn't see a military man with whom I didn't know. But in examining me, they showed me some pictures if I know anybody there from these people who know. They want to prove if I... And one of the pictures was of a man what I always going back to. I looked at one, I'm going back to this, go back to this. And finally I told to the, and they came, 5 lawyers came. There were 2 from court and all from Germany, and with a consul here. And finally I said, look, if you put on this head a uniform and a hat, I would say it's Mr. Schwind. They were laughing at it is Mr. Schwind. So the only one who I could recognize, because this face wasn't me, I saw him almost every day for a while. Going back now, I was, I think, in when the ghetto was got and so on. As I said, my father died in January of 1940, and we went to ghetto, and Mr. Mkowski sent me to the Verpflegungsabteilung. And there was all, we opened our own bakeries, so the bakeries had to come by floor, pay with the Polish money, what the German took away from us, and so on. And I was managing this until the end of the war. I was working there, and it was hard. During this time in ghetto life was the head of the German administration for the ghetto was a man by the name of Bibov. Bibov was a pardon me. Bibov was before the war a coffee merchant in Bremen. And his idea was, when he saw the war is going to an end and so on, to create for himself a business. So he started to send it to our ghetto, coffee, cacao, rice, all what he wanted to keep. And I had to keep record of it, every day how much came in. And when he came in, gave me a report. I had yesterday 5 sacks, today I have 10, tomorrow 15, and so on and so on. And he was talking to me, he was playing with his revolver over his finger to make an impression on me. I was giving me a report. The reports were very nice looking, but not always truthful. Because rice was one of the only items what we could give sick people who had dysentery and all kind of things. So I simply made an arrangement with one man in the warehouse to open a sack of rice from the back. And so when I need to give me a little bag of rice for some people, and people came and I was giving them rice. We worked so until the ghetto was liquidated. Going back again, in 1942, they closed the ghetto for a whole week. And they took away all sick people, elderly people, children. Everybody who couldn't work was not entitled to a soup. Prior to this, about the same year, they brought in 20,000 Jews, 10,000 from Czechoslovakia, Prague, 5,000 Berlin, 5,000 Wien. And they were assigned to work in ghetto. They were mostly people who came of a different background and different way of life. They came all with a beautiful luggage, and they let them take everything. Naturally, when they came to ghetto, they took it away from them. But there were people with a financial, very, very well background. I recall one of Dr. Hirsch, who was a member, a board member of most of the heavy industry in Czechoslovakia, Prague, a lawyer. He had a big office. He told me he had, at one time, about 60 people working for him in his office. His son was in South America, extremely wealthy man. No, what can such a man do? They were all used. At this time we were getting in potatoes. And we had to get the potatoes in from a certain place, what's called the Ballet Ring, which was the central point where the German came in. From there we had to take it away by ourselves. So we built a little, I couldn't call them a wagon, we called the green wagon. They were painted green, and people had to load it on with the potatoes and schlep all overnight to the places where they were, to kitchens and so on and so on. And all those people who came with the transport were busy with this, and I was working with them day and night on this case. So, such a man like Dr. Hirsch, I call it Dr. Bauer, people who are with a wealthy background and so on, no, they can do anything. What should they do? But I want to keep him alive. So I set up an office in the Verpflegungsabteilung, a room in the back, away from anything, register them as working people so they can get a soup. One day I was discovered, and the union eldest discovered it. He came and wanted to visit, what is there? So I see I am there, so I told him, okay, go in, take a look. He went and saw 5 people sitting there, and they're all elderly people, and you could see they are sickly too. What are they doing? I said, Mr. President, they are just getting here to get a soup. Something what they are doing, nothing more. They didn't say a word, turned around and went out. And those people did not survive. It didn't take long, they all disappeared. Just a few of them lived until then to go to Auschwitz too, but the majority of them succumbed after a short while. No, then they took away, about the same year, they took away children from others. The official explanation was they are going to Kinderheims, so homes for children. They took it away, and we knew they were killed, and the bodies were used to make candles. We found it out later. But this was the life in ghetto. When they closed up the ghetto in 42, when they closed it for a week, everybody went in hiding. I was the only one who worked. Meanwhile, I had an apartment across the office where I worked, across the street, with my wife and sister, one little room. But I was the whole day in the office there. And when they closed up the ghetto, and they started to make this, I took my wife and sister to the office too, and we were staying there with me. They went from house to house and took away elderly people and sick people and children and so on. And this was the big, in 42 was it. Nobody ever came back from it. Nobody was ever saw. The ghetto was liquidated. What was they taking away people was a constant idea, constant deal. Whenever they accumulated in a hospital, maternity, they took away one time to come and package their maternity and so on. No, they came to a point where the Soviet army were not too far away, and they know they have to clear lodge and so on. So they start to evacuate the ghetto, and the plans were made for it by the end of July, something like middle of July. The official explanation was we are being resettled to places of work. Germany needs our work. We are doing very good things for the German fatherland, and they need us. We have special places where they're going to settle us. We'll be working in factories and places. But you see, Germany don't have too many things for household use, and we are setting up new household for you. So you take all the parts you can use, all the things. Food you will have there enough, but parts and things like it, you will take it. And so naturally, even if we didn't trust them, we did not believe this is true, but you saw in cases like this, a glimmer of hope is always exists, and you think maybe it will. So every family packed in parts or whatever they could, and transport was going out from lodge every day. I went with the transport on the 28th of August 1944. The same transport where Runkovsky, the union eldest, went to. We were closed up in wagons, locked in, and I don't know how many nights and days, I think it seemed to me 2 nights or 2 days or something like it. When we finally were opened, let out, there was an Auschwitz, and a few bodies were who died during this time, so they turned us out. We had to get out of it, leaving everything there. This we will bring it to you later wherever you go. So everybody, as long as we stayed, everything was left there, and we went. Pardon me, bashed ahead, and there was standing a German officer. And all he looked at the columns and was making with his finger left and right, showing with his finger only one way, because whoever looked good can walk, went to the right. People who don't look like good to work in his eyes, the women, children, older people went to the left. Over there was no division between men and women. We could see right away it's a division between working and non-working people. The smell of the air there told us what is going on, because the whole Auschwitz was one smell of burning meat and all kinds of things like it. So we knew this is crematoria there. You'll be there a short time, and we found out many things in a short time from people who were there before us. No, when we were there, we were marched away from there. The ones who were assigned to the working groups marched away to special places. We were taken off the clothes, given water clothes, we were shaved, we were bathed, and so on, all kind of disinfection, all kind of things. And then we were given special clothes, the stripes, white and blue, striped uniforms. And we went out of there and went in barracks.
What happened to your wife and your sister?
They were all taken away to the left side. I never saw them again. And all the left side, what we found out later, they were all went to crematoria. The whole left side was. Those who were, according to them, able to work were taken after the disinfection, after the whole treatments. We took quite a while. And we were taken to barracks. We were lying on the floor. The barracks had only a roof and walls. The floor was gone floor without anything on the bottom. And at night they were put us up as soon as they could put in. Let's say they were laying one on top of another. As long as they had 1,000 people to get them in this place, 1,000 people to get in there, no matter how you lay and how you lie. And this, but every day they selected a group of people to send away to work to different camps. No, when we came on, they took away the Judenheld Sterumkowski, his wife, his adopted son, he has an adopted son, a young boy, and his brother. They took him away and they led him to a waiting truck, was a special built gas chamber, a driving gas chamber. They let him in it. It was closed, no windows, marshal, everything. And when he started to move, we were still laying in line there, watching for it. He moved away, and we could see the steam coming out and the gas and so on. We never saw him again, and never knew. We know later on we found that this was the place where they killed those people who were prominent. They didn't want them out to be done by the else, so they took him to this driving gas chamber. No, then they start to organize groups, then the way people to work to different places. The German industry was in need of working people, and they hired people from the SS. The SS was administering the camps, concentration camps, and sent people to work very well. No, I start to, when I saw this and the smell of there and so on, and I knew I am by myself, tried to go in a group just to get away from there. It didn't work. In a couple of groups I tried, and they threw me out because the people, they knew somebody else who was with them and so on. Finally, there was a group from Lodz, where they organized the Lodz group, and I saw a lot of people from the ghetto, faces, some people whom I knew, and they get together a group of 1,000 people. And we were sent away to Hanover, to the Continental Gummiwerke. This is a big factory who make tires and all kinds of gummy thing. No, there we were built in camps. The company had about 3 kilometers probably from the factory was a big camp built with barracks and so on. It was not comfort natural, but it was barrack, not on the floor. And we were working in the factory there. They brought in couples, people who they took out from prisons, criminals. Well, this would be the best element to be able to keep us in control. And we were working in this factory there and so on. And I saw the life in camp depend on each individual. Everyone was a big man, and he could do with you anything he wanted. The first camp commandant himself, he was not a bad man. I'll later come to it. But the couples who were governing us, they were just plain criminals, and they saddies, they enjoyed everything they could do. We didn't have easy life with them. They were, at any occasion, they were beating up people. One had a big dog, and he put his dog laws on people, and he enjoyed it when the dog bites somebody and so on. Things like it. The food what we were receiving were a loaf of bread, 1/2 pound, in the morning hours, cut in 17 pieces. Daytime was a soup at work. And evening was coffee with a loaf of bread cut for 6. No, the cutting of the bread, every barrack had his capo, which was the German criminal room for it, and they always take somebody else to help them to make up the report, to write them, to keep it clean and so on. When everybody went to work, 1 or 2 people remained in the camp to keep the camp in order. The barrack head, in my case, was a man who could hardly write and read. And I made up the report for him. I wrote him down how many people there and so on, and in the morning he get up and he had to give the report to the assessment, so he had in my handwriting, and he gave it to them. That's why he kept me in the barrack for a little while. Now, when we picked up bread, we always sent a few people to bring in the bread to be cut out in pieces. Now, a few people from our groups cut them in pieces. And you see, when they are hungry and they work with bread, so I cut up a little piece and ate it up, so the pieces were smaller and smaller. The 117, 200 something, 112 or 115 or 110, depending how much still. On top of this, the German couple took away 2 or 3 loaves for himself right away. Otherwise, instead of the normal so many people divided by 17 loaves of bread, we had less. We had to cut the same number of bread in smaller pieces to fit it with all people. Some pieces came out very small. One time, one of the boys, get a little piece, it was terrible, and I didn't see it, had no idea, because other boys were cutting it, and they were from the same group what we were. And they cut a little bit too much, they ate a little bit too much sharp, and didn't cut enough. So I was the responsible for it, because I had to supervise it. So they want me to tell them who was cutting it, who did it. I didn't know. I never knew who did anything. So I was the one whom they administered. They decided I deserve a beating. They administered me a very nice beating. Some people broke into days and couldn't walk for days. I was a very healthy and a very stubborn man. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of anything. They beat me up very well. I couldn't sit, I couldn't stay, I couldn't walk, but I went to work the following day to the factory. 2 people were holding me over the arms, and I was walking. And the couple, the German, asked me if I want to stay in the barrack. He knew he was responsible for it too, and I didn't say who did it. I should spend with him, because they found bread in his room, in his street. They found bread. And I didn't say anything, I didn't know it. So he just kind of felt bad of it, or I don't know what he felt. I was wondering very much, why does he so nice to me? He wanted somehow to pay back for it, wanted to give me bread or so on. I didn't take anything. I went to work with everybody, and that's it. It took me quite a long while to be able to work normally. This was one of the episodes. I worked in this camp until the end of November. During this time in the factory was making rubber tires mostly. No, the Germans didn't have any rubber. We were making rubber tires from rubber with additions what are needed for it. But their rubber was a very small percentage, maybe 5 or 6% rubber. Everything else was artificial things. And how they managed to hold it together, I don't know. The tires were not holding over too long and so on. And the way it was in a way done. The rubber is cooked on a certain place in big cooking kettle. When you have to watch after every minute, put in so much of this, so much of that. You have to be a little bit intelligent of what you're doing there. None of the people from concentration camp worked on these jobs. There were only 3 people, Germans or 3 workers who came from Poland, from France. One Chinaman was there too. I don't know how they get them, but he was a Chinaman. And and I worked downstairs on the machine where the rubber flows down, poured liquid, and it hardens on the big machines, on the big, how do you call them? Walzer, the German called them. And we had to cut them with knives to make the pieces rubber, let them through again to make it harder and so on and so on. That's why the fingers were burned up with this. And one day master who was in charge of the whole department was going around and so on. He always came look what somebody is doing to do the right thing, but he was responsible for getting out a good product for it. When it came to my machine where I was working, he asked me a question, I answered in German. He said, my German is not the same what other boys are getting. And he came to visit me another time the same night. And he came every night to visit me, and we worked together, and we got in a conversation. Finally, he became so friendly that he told me he's not a Nazi. He worked in a factory for many, many years, but he had to join the party in order to keep his job. So he's a party member. Like you say, you have many here in the factory who are not Nazi but are party members, but we have to keep his job. And okay, and he helped me as much as I could. I keep talking, telling about himself, about his family. One son was in the army and so on. And this was going on for a while until one time he came and said, I'm being transferred. And if there's anything I can do, let me know. Okay, good. How will I know where to get you and how to, I didn't know your name. So he shows me around the world, there is always a sign going around with lighting thing, moving around constant, that the confidence man of the party is Comrade Ewald. In American you would Ewald, but this is E-W-A-L-D. And you ask for me. Naturally I wouldn't do it, but if I would ask for him, if put him in trouble and me in trouble, so why should I do it? But so, okay, he went, and I was assigned to another master came to the same group, and we were working. One day while working on my regular machine there, an assessment came and called my number. The number, by the way, was 52962. Excuse me. Called my number and I went with him. I was taken into a big room, to a big office room. There was a long table and sitting about 15 or 18 people there, and among those faces I see my friend Ewald also. So I knew this is nothing what can be very tough. He is there and they call me in probably because of him. So they gave me a chair to sit down, talk to me, talk about anything but work. So the idea was for them what I should right away to see how my German language is, or I can communicate, and level of intelligence, probably whatever it is. Talking with me for about 10-15 minutes, and finally they came up, the head man of them, whom I later saw a few times, came up and said, look, you are an intelligent fellow, and you can have a job here without development less ever. It will end sometime. You can build up a very good future for you in Germany with us. We need people like you. So we will train you in a job what is nobody ever from the camp went to work there. But this will help you to get a future with us too. If I want to do it, sure, I want to do it. So they switched me over to on the fourth floor on the top one. They showed me the machines with this, very good rubber. What this is all a big scale, a big platform, and so many articles there, and you get a prescription. 1 pint of this, cook for 2 minutes. 1 pint of this for 3 minutes. And so it's going to hold all, and once everything is in, then let us brew and cook for half an hour, for depend of the thing what they made. And this, the liquid came down. There I was working originally when they cut this material would coming down. No, I worked there. They were before me, they were working Poles. 3 workers. I was the only one from the concentration camp who went there. No, I had to work. So I learned the Poles said when they could go away on the night shift especially, they go to the cantina by milk because the work was very dangerous. It was you have constantly breathe in chemicals. Our bodies were covered black from the black stove what we use and so on. But we had the right to get a shower every morning after work, but we never get white, always black. As the Poles, nighttime they want to take the milk and take a rest too. So, and if I can help them on the machine. And I thought this is beneficial for me too. I learned to work on 1, on 2. I was able to work eventually on 5 machines at the same time, and my machines never broke down. I had a problem, I fixed them very fast, and just so. They took advantage of it. In return, they were going home to the camps where they were living in special housings. And they had food, and they bought and they cooked for themselves, whatever it is, I don't know. But when they came leaving, they bought me always, have to be thankful to me too, what I helped them out, bring me a potato or some little bit of milk, what they had, and so on. So I had an additional potato or 2 bread they never had. So, but whatever I get, I just eat. And I helped them out quite a bit. And I was happy too because I was busy. You have no time to think, not to do anything, just busy. One time came back after a night shift, and I was laying in my barrack on my bed. He just came in maybe half an hour ago and so on. And the assessment at the door calls my number. I'm getting out. Follow me. And I see he's walking toward the factory. Went back to the factory, and turned out to be that the Polish worker couldn't come because the American bombs destroyed the railroad where they were coming with and so on. They couldn't come. So they had nobody. If they cannot work on the machines, the factory had no way of doing anything. So they know from the record that I can work on it. So they brought me back, and I worked on the machine, and the master who was on this group, the head of this, and his assistant, each one had 1 machine and so on. So we were working, so at least something came down to the production of the factory. At one point, those people were not used, they were used to supervise, but they didn't know how to work on the 2x2, probably forgot already. The master, the headman's machine broke down, he had to fix it. So I wouldn't say I didn't enjoy it. I enjoyed it too, to make him look bad too. So I say, if you want, I can use another machine too. I can work on it. Look at me. You mean you can work on 2 machines? Well, I can work on 5. So I put one machine, another. The result was that his machine, he was working the whole night, he never fixed it. His helper, his assistant, worked with him, and his machine wasn't working either. I was working all night on 5 machines. When the shift ended, they went home, and I was given a short time to lie down to relax, wait until my group comes from the campaign, and I worked my regular shift the whole day. So I worked day and night and a day, and went back home later evening. Went back after 36 hours of work. Went back went back to the barracks, and so this is my experience with them. On November the 30th, they decided they were bringing another group to this camp, to the Gummiwerke, and since we already trained working people there, there is to build not far from there in Arlem, a place called Arlem, is an old asphalt mine where they want to revert to a factory. So what we did, we used dynamite with a big to make big holes, the big bores, and put dynamite and get the dirt out of them and so on. And then we built a factory that we made floors. In about 6 or 7 weeks, the floors were ready and they brought in machines. But the interesting case in my case was when we were taking the dirt out from the asphalt mine, we had to go up, push the lorries with the dirt. There were 5, 6 people. Now, whoever was physically less able didn't do so much, so we had to help on all of them. And one time, but pulling out the dirt out there, pulling out, I'm going back with my empty load, I and 5 other people together and so on. And the guard, a heavy and elderly assessment, said, "It is back to us." So I say in German, "Excuse me." Now, German has a few different expressions for it. There are nice ones, not so nice one. I happen to use the nicer one. He turns around, looks at me, smiles, "Oh, bitte, bitte, go ahead." But then when I came out the next time, he stopped me and talked to me and so on. And where I know German from and why not, so I talked to him and so on. And then he told me after the second or the third day with him, he told me he's from Bremen. And he's a retired businessman. He used to be in the army as a young man, naturally. He's not in the reserve anymore. But no sooner take away the young people to the army for military service, they're calling in old people, put them in SS uniforms. They say, I am not a Nazi, I'm not an SS man, I have just a uniform and I have to watch you. Okay, and he told me about himself, his family, his son was in the army. No, and then he was going, most of the cases I had him with the guard with, whenever he was with us, he always made a point to be close to me and talk to me and so on and so on. And I always managed to be in the outside line, so he can talk to me too. Then he tells me one time that his wife is coming next week to visit him. And if he'll have a chance, he will introduce her to me. No, he came, his wife came, when he was on guard, so she was with him, standing outside. And when I went by again with the same type of work, he stopped me, introduced me to his wife. So, and somehow we get with him a little contact. Naturally, I was very careful not to ask too many questions. I didn't want to talk too much, I want to put him in troll leader. But then when rumors came around that we are being evacuated, because the American army is too close and we will evacuate the camp and so on, so I didn't know what to do. I know people are being marched out of camps. We heard all kinds of rumors what is. So I told him there are rumors that the camp is being evacuated. If you can find anything for me about. I told him, good, I will. A few days later he told me, yeah, your camp is being evacuated on the 6th of April, Friday, and the people who are able to march will march out with SS, with so on. Sick people will be left inside. And the electricity will be turned on in the fences, so we will close it in, and what happened later, he doesn't know. So I asked him, okay, what do you think I should do? I said, look, I cannot tell you what to do, he says to me, but if I were you, I would stay with the sick. I was not far from being sick anyway, so, but I was managed to run and walk, so I decided to stay there. The camp was evacuated on Friday the 6th. The main unit marched away, and we were there closing the gates.
What year?
This was in April of 1945. Forgot to keep dates in order. And where they went, we didn't know. When the camp is evacuated. So we were there. And the camp was evacuated, as I said, on the 6th of April. And an hour later, civilian people from outside came to the gate, somehow managed to disconnect the electricity, opened the gate, came in, bought us cans with coffee, soda, drink, and so on. They want to be friendly with us. No, at this time, I understood one thing. They are not disappeared entirely, the Germans. They are somewhere around, or they come back. In a war, people go forth and back, armies go forth and back. So I asked my people, don't go out, stay here. Let's wait to see what will happen. Now, younger people, we are free, the gate is open, we go. So they went out and I chose. So then they went to the villages around and went into homes probably. That's what I heard later on. The main thing was the following day, Saturday morning, an assessment was with a truck, with the open truck. And they looked around and counted up, and I was riding in front center with some other people, counted up 19 people on the truck. So I was among the first 90 people on the truck. Another couple of others are here too. And we were driving toward, I don't know where. Turns out we were driving to a place in Hanover called the Schützenplatz. This is where they had the military camps and exercise, and the SS headquarters were there, and their magazines, everything was there, and so on. And we had to be, the orders for the SS force, after the main unit marches out, the SS had to bring without us the people to this Schützenplatz to be executed, and they won't leave anybody alive out of the sick people. But when we came up there for Saturday morning, they
5 more minutes. It's okay.
In front of the gate was military man, an old general, and I heard him telling the Wehrmacht, listen, your friends are gone, we are the Wehrmacht, we are not murderers, we are not killing people, and so on. Anyway, to make it short, we were hiding there. The French POW camp was there closed, we were hiding there, and in few days later, on Wednesday, the American army came in. And they were liberated downstairs. I went the same day to the officer in charge, told him we are 19 people, and we had to have some kind of food, whatever, how it would go by and so on. He, after a short conversation, appointed me the liaison between the people, and he said, we don't know how many people will be, but let's see what we can. And then he ordered the German authorities after the war then to work with us, give us food, whatever is needed. So on order of them, I had organized the organization, which later became a big political organization, politically taking care of the truth. In order to avoid our people not to get in touch with Germans, I was the one responsible for giving a ration card for our people and for traveling people coming through, looking for families, and money too. I accounted with the Germans, and they replenished my funds always, and so on and so on. I'm jumping ahead.
Can you tell us a little bit about, we only have a few minutes left,
yeah,
how and when you came to the United States?
Okay, I was in 1946, 47, I was a witness in the British Military Tribunal too. I have a written document on it, I can show it to you. Then finally it took a long time, but we started opening the immigration to the United States with different difficulties. I managed to come here in 1950. Came to New York, didn't like New York, and even if my sister was there, and after 2 weeks my wife and I decided we'll move away from New York and we'll go to California, which we know only from school what California is. And we came here in 1950 June, and since then I worked in different places. Then I took up a job in a warehouse where they call shoe stores. And after I went to school and learned to communicate with people and so on, I went to the management, told them my background, they took me to the office, and I'm still with them. I am for 30 years with the company as office manager with the Cars division.
Now you met your wife, your present
wife.
My
wife met I knew her from the ghetto. She was in ghetto. As a matter of fact, she worked in the department. I was the office manager. But later, by accident, she was liberated in Bergen-Belsen. This was her last camp. And I went into Bergen-Belsen with an American doctor who was looking for relatives. What his grandmother told him for me, relatives, so on. So I went with him, and while I parked the car there in the middle of the big yard, somebody called my name. This is my wife. She recognized me.
This is not the same lady who was selected with your sister.
My wife. This is my second wife, but I married in 1946.
It wasn't clear. I thought we'd better clarify that.
I mentioned before, my wife went to Auschwitz.
Well, we have just about a few more minutes.
You see, to make out a few episodes from the camp that I mentioned before, when not much in camp, but after the war, there were people who were hiding on papers as non-Jews and so on. And one case had with a doctor who I helped to get back to the connection with the British. Rabbi Dr. Monk helped to get back to Judaism. There was a woman came one time from Poland, a Polish woman with a young kid, he was born in 1939, he was some 8 years old. And she told me this boy is Jewish. She used to be a maid with his mother's family when his mother was a baby. And they left the baby with him, with her, and she took care of it. She kept him as a child of her daughter and so on. Anyway, and she knew that an uncle is in Israel. I wrote to Israel, different places. I finally found the uncle was, and he took him over to Israel, the son and the woman.
You have
This
two
is-
children of your own, don't you? Two boys.
Pardon
Two
me?
sons.
I
You
have two boys of
sons?
my own, yeah.
Mm-hmm.
One boy was born in 1947 in Germany, came out here almost 3 years old. My younger son was born here in 1951. They are both working, they are both graduates from UCLA, and they're both in the computer field. My older one is in Boise. I have two grandchildren, 12 and 10. And last month, on the 6th of April, had another granddaughter from my younger son here in LA. In LA, right. And
They knew about the Holocaust as they were growing up. Your sons and your
oh yeah,
wife.
we knew, you
talked
see,
about
they
it.
knew as much, but I was very ill in 1960. And after my recovery,
Well, I think we'll stop here. Thank you very much.
I thank you.